Let's go ahead and get started. And let's first find out if you're in the right place. So this clinic is for you if you're probably a youth football coach. But we've been getting some high school coaches as well who runs or is thinking about running the wing tee or maybe some kind of hybrid. There's a lot of ways to incorporate wing tee concepts into other offenses. And specifically, we're gonna talk about the belly series, and specifically the belly down series. And there's a lot of terminology around wing tee, and I'll make it really clear what I'm talking about here in just a little bit. There's a chat function, and I'll be checking on that periodically. And I've got a helper that's kind of pay attention to that also. If you have questions that come up about the clinic, that'd be great. My only request is, and don't be afraid to speak up. My only request is let's avoid kind of side chats or tangential conversations, just so we keep the chat box focused on this subject. All right, so what's your belly series? The odds are you may be thinking about belly as the weak side belly, kind of cross block or iso play, and that certainly is part of the classic belly series. But this is part of my heritage here in Sherwood, Oregon, where we've been running the wing tee for a long time, we call that a separate series, and we think of the belly series as really the plays that revolve around the down play. And down it's one of my favorite plays in the wing tee. It's simple. It's something you can put in with 7 or 8 year olds, but we still run it at the high school, and it's a great play. And we'll cover that. We'll cover a counter off that play, a sweep play, and a pass play. And if you look at that picture in front of you, this is a classic wing tee series because you've got 4 different key players with the ball on 4 different plays with very similar backfield motion. And that's really what the wing tee is about. It's series based. It's relying on some similar movement in the backfield to help hide where that ball's going. So this is my favorite series, and I'm a little contrarian. A lot of people like to talk about Buck series. It's not that I don't like the Buck series. I'm a big fan of that too, but belly, I think, is a little bit easier for youth teams to install. It puts most of the pressure really on one side of the line, and if you've got a decent tight end and a decent guard, I think you can do some great things with this series. As I said before, we've got an ISO play. I've got some slides towards the end that I'll jump into if we have time. I don't think we will. I'll probably just end up covering that in a future web clinic. But if we get time, then I'll certainly go into it. And I'll have a little bit of time at the end if any of you just want to talk about it. So some terminology here, because you're going to see some numbering and some whole numbering. If you haven't looked at my playbooks at all, we have odd to the left, even to the right, and we pretty much number over a player. So 0 is really just over the center, but maybe inside a gap. 2 is right guard, 4 right tackle, etc. And the backfield, we number 1, 2, 3, and 4, with 1 being quarterback, 2 being the left half or wing back, 3 being fullback, and 4 being the right wing or halfback. Let's dive right in, guys. Right 36 down. So this is a fullback play to the 6 hole, which is, jumping back here. Technically, it's over that tight end, but I'll tell you that hole might be anywhere from 4 to 6, and it depends on what defense you're seeing and maybe some choices you make in blocking. But we think about that fullback running right towards either the outside hip of that right tackle or the inside hip of the tight end. The backfield flow is you have the left halfback faking a sweep play, and you have the right halfback showing a down block just outside that tight end. So he's actually going to be looking right in at it. Let's say there's a defensive end, heads up on that tight end or outside shade. He's going to be staring right down on him like he's going to down block that guy. Now, I show the quarterback booting here, and I've run it over the last 10 years. I've run it both ways. I think we're probably leaning more towards not booting that quarterback. It's an easy option to put in. I would say pick something and go with it. The reason that we didn't boot him last season is that we like showing that same keep pass or down pass flow off of this, and it makes everything a little more consistent. But I will say we've had some success in the past with just a complete naked boot off this, and you might think about that, and you could even just put that in as a tag. But we'll look at some of that at the end. Backfield flow, and then we'll get into some blocking. I put a blog post out there about yeah, I noticed somebody's having some problems getting the video. Yeah, make sure you refresh your screen. Of course, if you're, yeah, thanks, Julie, for stepping in there. Refresh and hit play, so you might be a little behind. That's all right. All right, so let's talk about the quarterback footwork here. On the down play, and this is in contrast to that belly weak side or cross block ISO play, we're not going to get depth with that quarterback. We're going to be pretty flat down the line. And so if we're running the 36 down play to the right, that quarterback's going to be reverse pivoting off of his right foot and swinging almost fully around so that his back is to the line of scrimmage without hardly getting any depth. I'm okay with him getting a little bit of depth. We want his thinking to be really getting right onto the heels of that play side guard. At the same time, the fullback is doing, if you've got a fullback who can follow directions and, you know, is willing to do a little footwork work, especially at the higher levels, we like to see a crossover step to get just a little bit of side lateral movement, but then we go downhill fast. And I'll tell you, you can run this play just fine, telling that fullback to not even do a crossover and just, you know, pick that aim point of right hip of that tackle, and you'll be fine. On that second step, the quarterback is going to be now stepping out with his right foot and reaching back to give the ball to the fullback. And on that third step, he's going to transfer weight from right foot to left and putting it right in the belly of that fullback for the dive. And then the quarterback will continue on faking the down sweep. And then, like I said, either booting or following and showing that keep pass. The play side wing back, and this is pretty important. You don't want to block this the same as you block buck sweep. If you're used to buck sweep, that wing back's rule is going to be to block down on the first guy he sees outside the tight end. Yeah, it looks like one of our coaches is having some problems. I will say this, that this is being recorded, and if you end up having problems, I'll make sure you get a replay. Hold on a second. All right, let's move on. I don't want to hold everybody else up. So we're going to have that wing back. He can step down towards that guy if there's somebody, you know, between him and the tight end, but he's going to go straight to backer. And the reason is that we want to trap or kick out that first guy that's heads up to outside shade on the tight end. Now that might, depending on the defense you're seeing, that might be somebody that's spread out even outside the wingback, and that's fine. If that's the case, you're probably going to get a lot of yards on the play. Usually you're going to see a stand-up defensive end or a outside linebacker that's in pretty tight on that tight end. And we want to just go right around that guy with that wingback and get to linebacker. The backside halfback or wingback, depending on what formation you're in, you can start him in either position, is faking that down sweep. And because that down sweep is a fairly slow developing play, I think you can start him from either the wingback or the halfback position. If you start him in halfback, you might even need to do an open step or some kind of delay so that he doesn't get there too quickly. Because you really want to sell that that down sweep as well. So you can motion him if you want. You don't have to. So let's talk about some blocking here. All right, here I'm showing the down play against an odd front. And, you know, alignments can always be different. You got to spend some time, you know, pre-game and then during the game looking to see where things are. But this is a good way to see how the rules come into play. And let's focus really on play side. Backside rules are really just going to be to reach right or reach to play side, and you know, if they can, get to backer. And in this case, we'd like that left guard to get up to that weak side backer. Because the tight end has somebody that's, you know, well inside him, and you know, maybe an outside shade or in the gap between him and the tackle, he's going to block down on him. The right tackle, unless that defensive tackle slants in hard on him, which if you're playing a 3-5-3, they're probably a slanting defense. He has to be prepared for that tackle to slant into B gap, and if he follows his rule and steps, he would be stepping down with his left, and if that guy crosses his face, he can just continue down with a down block right on him, and then the tight end would be going on to backer. But assuming that he doesn't, maybe he slants out or just drives straight in on his outside hip, that tackle is going to go straight to Mike with that center controlling the nose. Now, if you've got some stud nose tackle, you might need to do a combo on the nose with the tackle in the center and hope that the center can control him and have the tackle then scoop up to that Mike backer. The right halfback is going to go and block down on that strong side inside backer, and the right guard with a pull step. And in this case, it's going to be one step that's about 45 degrees deep, and then he's coming downhill fast. We tell him to scrape paint and kind of walk right down the back of the tackle and tight end. And he's probably going to kick out that, we call it a hawk in our defense, but you know, it's a strong safety or a outside linebacker. And if you're a youth coach, that player is probably going to be pretty close to the line of scrimmage. He's not going to be too worried about sitting back in coverage, so that guy's going to present pretty quickly, and that guard's going to kick him out. And that fullback is going to see that hole right between the tight end and that right guard kick out, and that's just got to be his aiming point. He's got to trust that it's going to show up. All right, let's look at it versus a 4-4. So now let's say that we got a defensive end that's heads up on that tight end. He's going to leave him be. You know, the only exception would be if that defensive end slants in hard and gets in his way, then you know, he may need to take him. But even in that case, we're going to try to rip through that. And when we talk about the line calls, you'll see why, because we really want to trap that guy. When you see a look like this, it almost looks like the buck sweep or the buck trap play. And if you look at the blocking, it looks very similar to, you know, the right side trap play where you're really just trapping that defensive end. And you're going to have a much better time with that guard kicking him out than that tight end trying to control him. He's probably just going to end up making a pile and pushing that hole out, and then you're really counting on that halfback blocking that outside backer, which I don't know about you guys, but I usually don't like that matchup. The center in this case is probably just going to go straight and try to get that weak side backer if you're lucky. And we have the wide receiver come all the way across the field for a cutoff on that safety. All right, when I pause, I'm just checking over to make sure there's aren't any new questions coming up as I go. Okay, so let's talk about this right side a little bit more, because this is where you got to spend your time, is working these blocks. And we make a line call with that tight end, and he's either going to make an in or an on call, and you can come up with whatever you want. An on call, which is what he would make here, is when that tight end has a man heads up to outside shade on him, and he's really talking to that guard and telling that guard that that's going to be his guy, and he shouldn't expect the tight end to block him. In the case where we saw, just backing up real quick, where we saw that odd front, he would make an in call, and that's telling the guard that that man he sees down the line, because they can't always see the alignment well, that man he sees down the line is going to get blocked by the tight end, and the guard should be expecting to go out and get that backer. So this is a summary of the calls that I just made. And, you know, we like, when that tight end makes that call, we like to teach him, just stick with it. Even if that guy slants in, just go ahead and rip through, even if you need to go around the outside of him, because we like our chances with that guard kicking him out. Usually he's not going to see that guy coming from the side. You might see a good ear hole, pancake block, and the fullback should be able to work right inside of that. So here's a little bit of, you know, the film doesn't work great on these, but if you've been following my site, you probably have been able to look at some film from my teams. You know, here's an example where we can look at some alignment here and what we should expect to see. And if you look, you'll see that there is a man just inside the tight end and almost heads up on the tackle. And there's a stand-up defensive end, outside linebacker that's, you know, maybe number 85, that is the guy we're hoping to trap and kick out. Now, I really want that tackle and tight end certainly to take care of that lineman, but I want one of the two of them to get to backer. And from what I can see, that center should have a free run to get to linebacker. So this is not a bad alignment here. It really comes down to what this number 20 is going to do and whether he bites and goes up to the line of scrimmage or sits back, because that 20 is probably not going to get blocked in this case. So you can kind of see the film here, and a couple things happened that weren't great. We ended up getting a bunch of yards on this play, but one thing that happened was the tackle and tight end totally controlled that lineman, but neither one felt compelled to get to the second level, which I didn't like. I think this was pretty early in our season. And second, my center, who actually was a really good center, he's the guy who's just standing there now being a spectator on the play and not blocking that backer. So you want to watch the players, you want to grade them, give them feedback. But what I like is I've got this wingback, and he's the guy you can see right below the right-hand part of the S coming through, and he's going to get on that backer, and we end up making a really big play because that number 20 ended up not being able to make the play. So I want to back up one bit here and talk about this outside linebacker and what you can do with this hawk. And this is, or the outside linebacker and the right halfback. You know, you're going to have some intelligence about what you're going to see if you're going to mess with this rule for the right halfback. But in some cases, you might find it better to tell that halfback to go, you know, step down to influence that end, but then to turn and just wall off an outside linebacker to make the play. And that really is going to come down to, you know, where are their best players? Is that halfback even have a chance of getting to an inside backer? And is that really the best guy to block? But I mean, you're all coaches, you know, you got to be flexible with these things and figure out your own tweaks from time to time. All right, let's talk about what can go wrong here. And I did a post a couple weeks ago about troubleshooting the down play with some video. Make sure you go check that out. I think you'll find it pretty useful. First, the biggest mistake that I see season to season is the tight end thinks he's helping out the team by blocking anybody that's inside shade to outside shade on him. And don't assume that you can just tell him what his rule is and that he's going to follow that rule. It helps if they understand the play, but you got to drill it. Drill it over and over again. Play with some different alignments as you're running, you know, some group and teamo, and really get him making that good first step. Because the worst thing that can happen is that tight end on the right side makes a step with his right foot and just starts boxing a defensive end right in front of him, thinking that he's going to block him. And pretty much whenever that happens, that defensive end ends up controlling my tight end and being right there to make the tackle on the fullback. So that's the first place I would look. Second is you need good gap and down block techniques. And I go into this in some of my posts, and we covered this in the O-line clinic last month. But teaching that, you know, down as a rule, but you have two different blocks that you need to use. That gap block, which is going to be an opposite shoulder. So if I step left, I'm going to hit with my right shoulder and get my helmet in front of him, whereas a down block is the same shoulder technique. And we teach both of those because they need to be prepared for penetrating or blitzing linebacker, a quick defensive lineman. And sometimes they just need to throw their helmet in front of the guy and just try to move him down the line of scrimmage. If you don't work blocking with your wingbacks, you could have problems here. And, you know, my take is that if the play's sort of working, you're getting 3 or 4 yards, you're probably not getting a good block on that linebacker. You know, I love seeing 5 to 8 yards on this play, you know, with a cornerback or a safety making that tackle. That shows that we're doing things right. The guard footwork, usually the issue I see is they try to use the same footwork on down that they use on buck sweep. And our play side guard on buck sweep is going to go pretty deep. He's going to take 2 deep steps at 45 degree and then start to work upfield for his block. And if he does that on down play, you're gonna see guys blowing it up on the inside. So he's got to take just one pull step and then get downhill fast and kick that out with the same shoulder block. Poor line communication might be an issue. And then lastly, timid fullback. A fullback who doesn't realize that hole may not look like it's there until he shows up. So getting him used to hitting that hole hard, it's not going to move around that much. And just, you know, getting on the inside hip of that guard as he's kicking out and the outside hip of that tight end and trusting that the hole will be there and, you know, protecting that ball and getting downhill is really important. And if any of you have questions as we're going along, go ahead and ask them in that chat box. If I notice it right away, I'll go ahead and try to answer it while we're covering the topic. Otherwise, we'll make a list and I'll cover it at the end during the Q&A. All right, some adjustments to consider. You know, some wing T coaches, they don't even have that tight end blocking anybody that's on that gap inside, and they're only going to block down if there's a guy heads up on that tackle. I think that's a little bit too much thinking for the tight end. Makes his rule a little bit harder, but you can consider that. You can go unbalanced. If you have a good cornerback out there that is, you know, sitting up on that tight end and maybe making the play, flip your wide receiver over and spread it out. Put them all the way out at the numbers. to pull that corner out. It might pull the safety over more, but it might buy you a little more space to run the play. Something that some teams do, and I'm not a big fan of this, because I just like, especially at the youth level, developing players for doing, even if they're, second tier and they're not as strong as your best guys. I like them all doing everything, but some wing T teams have a lot of success flipping their line. And if there are coaches out there on this chat, chime in if you're a big fan of this. I'd like to hear your comments. But what I'm saying here is, let's keep it simple. Let's say you run down to the right and down to the left. Of course, you're going to flip your tight end, but some teams will flip their guard and tackle as well. So they basically have, they might call it a strong or a play side guard, and they always put the weaker player on the other side. So that the rules stay the same. They just need to know how to flip right and left, but you're always going to have the same guard, tackle, and tight end at the point of attack on this play. And I guess the nice thing about doing that in this series is that you've also got your stronger players running that counter play too, because we pull the guard and the tight end on the counter. So your mileage may vary on that. I've never done it that way, but some teams like to do that. You don't have to boot the quarterback. You kind of heard me alluding to the fact that we really didn't do that last season. So you might just want to have him continue to roll out on that play action keep pass, which we'll get into in a bit. All right, let's talk about counter. Love this play. Sometimes we run this one too much because you get greedy. You score a touchdown or two off this play, and you start forgetting that you really need to set this up with a down play. But God, this play just works so well. The backfield flow looks the same. So your fullback is going to flow, almost to the same place, except his rule is just he's going to let that tight end cross his face in front and then fill right off that right hip of the right tackle. Quarterback is going to have about the same footwork, and we'll talk about that just a little bit, because this is one of the questions that I've been getting a lot from other coaches, is whether you do this inside or an outside handoff. That left halfback is going to fake the sweep. The rule for the left tackle, left guard, and center is just, gap down to the right. So very typical down blocking scheme. Right guard is going to pull flat. He's got to pull flat because otherwise he's not going to be able to clear, get space between the center and the quarterback as that quarterback turns. He can get a tiny bit of depth as he takes that second step, but we want him coming downhill hard off that left tackle and using a same kick out technique. So he's pulling left. It's going to be a left shoulder kick out as well. The right tackle needs to be able to execute a reach block. And you may find that if you've got A and B gap, strong side with some good players, this play may be tough to run if you don't have a good right tackle and if he can't reach that. If we've got one guy between the center and the tackle, you're probably going to be in pretty good shape, because you can probably get a double team between that center and the right tackle. And then we have the tight end pull. He can get a little bit of depth with that first step because he's got to clear that tackle, but he should just be hauling flat down the line, following that guard, and then turning up into the hole as a lead blocker. Your tight end's probably going to be a tall, gangly player. I don't get these, even at the 8th grade level, I don't get a lot of 6'1", 160-pound kids. I tend to get, if they're 6 feet tall, they're going to be 130 pounds, and they like to run really straight up and down. So we work with that tight end on running low, kind of crouching, working kind of squats through there to hide himself, but also to get himself in a good position as he turns that corner, square his shoulders, just like a running back, and find somebody. The right halfback, who's the ball carrier here, is going to step. You can either have him step down like he's going to block and then turn, or you can just have him open up. We like to have him open up because it's just teams aren't good enough at reading him, and he just opens up and pauses for just less than a half second. So when I say open up, if we tilt our wing back, so he would be tilted in towards, so his chest is facing the tight end. So we would have him pivot on that right foot and turn it, pivot his left foot back so that his chest is now pointing straight across the field towards that left guard to left tackle. So he opens up and then just runs right on a path as that fullback crosses his face, and we run it to the inside. So he's going to follow that tight end, run it inside, and get the handoff from the quarterback. Because we like the inside handoff, that quarterback may need to, when he opens up on that first pivot, may need to get a little more depth than he does on down. But if your line's doing well, you should probably still have plenty of room inside. And the reason we like the inside handoff is that it just hides it better. You can do just fine with an outside handoff. So if you like running that quarterback really flat down the line, and you want to show that fake to the fullback, you can easily run that halfback or wingback around the outside of the quarterback. The key though is this is an inside play, and this path that you see with that halfback going off the left tackle, that's even wider than we typically like to see it. Usually by the time you've got those down blocks coming from the tackle and guard and the kick out, this is a an A or a B gap play most of the time. We like that halfback to turn up real fast, getting towards that hole and running inside. So here's blocking against an odd front, like a 3-5-3 or a 5-3. You're going to have on the play side, you'll have that tackle. And this is kind of the same issue you'll have with the tight end. That tackle's got to leave that guy that's heads up, leave him alone, because that's the guy we want to trap or kick out. And so he's going to go straight to Mike backer. The left guard's going to go down on the nose. The center may need to hang out with that nose just a bit to make sure they control him. And then ideally you want him get to that strong side inside backer. Right tackle is going to reach his tackle, and the right guard's going to pull left and turn upfield, and we really want him to kick out that tackle. And so you can see how that play could easily turn into an A-gap play. And the closer this play is to the center when we turn up, usually the better the play is, because we don't even bother blocking that outside linebacker, and he's often kind of screaming into the backfield from trying to chase that sweep. And we get a lot of free room to roam there. Against a 4-4, that play side tackle is probably going to be blocking down on a defensive lineman. Whether you have an over and under front depends on whether where he's going to be, but usually we're going to see an alignment with the guy heads up to outside shade of the guard, and that's going to be the tackle that's going to down block him. Guard, again, is going to go to backer. Center is going to block down on that other tackle. And the right tackle, we're usually not even going to worry about that defensive end there. And we're going to try to get the fullback to pick him up and get that tackle to work his way into the backfield and try to stop that other outside linebacker from scraping across. So in this case, the guard's going to kick out that defensive end, and we're hoping that tight end will pick up the weak side backer. So some key teaching points. Fakes are key in the wing T, and so we always want to have that fullback showing a good fake. If he can get tackled, it's better than a block. And he's filling for that tight end, so he's got to take a pretty, you want to, it's almost like a mesh there. He's going to go off that fake handoff from the quarterback, and I'll talk about that in a second. But he's going to need to be in pretty tight to make sure that he can fill for that tight end. You will need to determine yourself whether your quarterback is able to ride kind of a hip-to-hip belly fake on this before giving to that wingback coming over. I think that's the better way to do it. But if it's not working for you, you can get by with an influence fake. And an influence fake is just where the motion itself and kind of a click of their pads as they cross each other is enough to sell it if that fullback is doing a good job. But if we can belly fake that, one reason I really like that is that it's going to set you up well for running the down sweep, and it looks the same. And you run down a few times and you run this counter play, and then you run the touchdown play, which is that down sweep, which I'll get into. And I think I already covered those other topics there. Got a question there. What blocking adjustments do you make on counter if all three, the right guard, right tackle, and tight end, are covered? Yeah, it's that's tough. And on the one hand, it's like, wow, you got three guys over there, and so you'd think running a counter off that could really work. When I start to see guys fill in the box with linemen, I usually start going to some different plays where we're going to avoid pulling linemen and move to some of our power stuff, and then try to get them back to honoring that. I might try to run down sweep and not pull the guard in that case. That's a lot to ask a center, right tackle, and a fullback to prevent any backfield penetration from those three linemen. But I'd try it, because what might happen is if you're running down successfully, the fullback might get tackled by two of them, and that's just as good, and you're probably going to see a big play. So you can play with adjustments such as keeping guys home. I typically don't like doing that. There's one series where we do that. That's with some of our power sweep stuff. But generally speaking, I avoid making a lot of special rules like that, because we're asking the kids to do a little bit too much in that case. All right, let's move on and talk about what can go wrong. I already mentioned this. The play side tackle has got a down block, and it starts with a good first step. I'm a stickler for footwork, and if you get the guys stepping the right way, they're less likely to make a poor decision. So you drill this by, if their rule is down right, they got to be stepping down to the right and using that gap or down technique, and ignore that guy that's heads up on them. We need good kick out from the pulling guard, and the tight end has to be committed to finding a defender. I did a post earlier this week where you can see my tight end kind of running through, and it's like he runs past two linebackers to go block a safety. We've all seen that, and the kid probably didn't see him, or just found a guy with another jersey and said, I'm going to go block him. But you really want him, with that head on a swivel as he's turning the corner, finding that first, other wrong colored jersey and taking him. All right, let's get into down sweep here. I think this is probably the biggest innovation we've seen in the wing tee of the last 6 to 8 years are these belly sweep plays, the down sweep and the weak side belly sweep. And our high schools had great success running this. The high school runs more down sweep than ISO sweep. I've typically run more ISO sweep than down sweep. And one reason that down sweep can be a little bit difficult to run is you're sometimes going to see pretty good talent on that outside edge on the strong side tight end. So you might see a cornerback that can actually tackle, a strong safety, and a defensive end. And if you don't set this play up properly, it's hard to block well. And that's why I almost call this another option play. We run this instead of the down option, and we used to run the option. And if you're a wing T team, you might be running the option. We've found that the option it's its own little mini offense that requires its own drilling and decisions by the quarterback, and it eats up too much practice time. So that's when we went to this down sweep instead of doing the option. And so there's really no reading involved. But the reason I call it, sort of an option is that we tend to run this play when we're pretty confident that an unblocked defensive end or outside linebacker isn't going to be a problem, because he's going to buy that fake to the fullback and start squeezing in. And if you've got guys on the sideline with good assignments and are watching these things, and you start to see you're pounding some yards on that down play, and you're starting to see that strong side linebacker, outside linebacker, or defensive end really starting to get pissed off because you're blowing them up and starts cheating in. That's when you want to run this play. So let's look at the blocking for it. We're gonna block down everybody on play side. Their rule is block down. Gap down, and very simple rules. And that quarterback is going to ride and open up like the down play, but the path is not going to be as wide as it would be on the counter or the down. So it's almost like he's going to pivot with a little more depth and ride that play in, just like it's down, but it's going to turn inside faster. And that we want that fullback to get tackled, and ideally we want you want the linebackers collapsing in on that, because we're going to fake that. We're going to ride it in the belly, kind of a hip to hip ride, and then turn up and give it to that halfback, whose rule is we like to run this sweep wide. This is kind of an E-alley type play, run to the numbers, but he's going to have to read that block by the left guard who's pulling. We want that left guard to pull and log to create that outside tunnel for the halfback. But if that guy's boxing and staying wide, then we'll kick him out and turn it upfield. This is a play that if you don't set it up properly and you don't have a really good halfback, you can get tackled for a loss in the backfield, because it's not like buck sweep where you've got two guys out there and you got a lot of help and you're going to turn it up. You're trying to run this wide, and if they're good, if he's obeying his rule and stringing that guy out, and you got a guy that has force, who knows what he's doing, and he just keeps riding him out, he can run him out of bounds at the 5 yards deep. So you've been warned. I'm looking at a couple comments right now. So one comment is, I'll get back to these because some I may not be able to process it quickly enough, but there's one quickly. Would you pull play side guard on the sweep? You can. You could do kind of a fold, and it starts to look almost like we do the weak side belly. So depending on what defense you're going to see, you might have success because it's going to look a little bit more like the down play in that case. So you could fold that play side guard and have him hook around the tight end, so you're pulling both. And I have no issue with that. There was another question about depth. Our normal depth for the fullback is going to be 4 yards deep, and the halfback is going to be in that dive back position at the same depth. And he's going to run that sweep flow flat. So he's not going to get any depth. He's going to run right at the heels of that fullback as he's coming across the field. And unlike buck sweep, he's going to run this wide. He's not going to run up and then square and turn up like on buck sweep. He's going to. We want him to try to get out to the numbers on this play. All right, let's move on. Here we are versus a 4-4. And this is, if I was looking at a 4-4, this is a situation where I absolutely might consider pulling that play side guard if I think I can get a good down block on that right tackle, because I've got the fullback coming through to help fill. If you look at the play though, it looks kind of like buck sweep when you pull that play side guard. It's just we're going to run it wider. It's not going to be a D gap play. It's going to be a E alley type play, and that fullback is going to be doing the fake on play side. But again, this is a serious deal. You got to be running that down play, and if you can get away with pulling the play side guard, you might even be selling it even more, which could be to your benefit. If I look back at my film with Downsweep, and this is youth football, so I've run it a lot, especially Downsweep at kind of that 7th and 8th grade level. I almost feel like we almost didn't even need to block it, and the reason is that we were so good with running that down play that we bruised them so badly with that this was just. This was the nail in the coffin type play. And if you got a good halfback that's got some speed, he doesn't need to get too far to that edge to turn it into a big play. All right, some key teaching points. I already talked about putting this in instead of option. I don't think the belly ride is optional with this play. I think you've got to seat that ball in the belly and ride it and really get those linebackers thinking that fullback's taking the ball before you pull it out. It's not an option. The quarterback's not making a read, so I think it's pretty easy to teach this. We're not asking you to get into a read option or triple option. It's just a technique that you need to work on. And if you do it well, then you can do a lot of other things like the ISO and ISO sweep as well. And like I said, the pulling guard is going to take his man where he wants to go. We prefer to log him. All right, let's get into the down pass. And this is the main reason why we've stopped booting that quarterback, is because we love this keep pass. It's simple, and I think it's the best way to get the ball into the hands of your tight end, because you're going to put that cornerback and that outside linebacker into conflict if you're running a good play action, because usually that outside linebacker is going to stay in. So the flow here, and I'm not going to show different blocking because we teach the line to block this just like it's a running play. Reach to the right. We don't worry about them getting downfield. We tell them reach to the right. Don't go to backer. Protect your area, because we just don't spend a lot of time on pass protection at this level. So they do a reach rule. The tight end is going to run. At the older levels, we like to run it 10 to 15 yard banana route, and we have that halfback run a very shallow route, just about 2 yards. And what's usually going to happen is that cornerback is either going to take the tight end or the halfback. He's not going to take both, and you might figure out who your flat defender is. And it's probably that outside linebacker, and if you've been setting it up, he's going to be keying in on that down play action, and one of those two is going to be wide open. And if you hit the halfback, you've got a blocker downfield. If that tight end's open, you might get a lot of yardage on that. And it's an easy pass for the quarterback. He's usually going to be throwing on about his 6th, 7th, or 8th step coming out. Depending on your quarterback, you can think of it as a play action sprint out pass where he's going to continue to flow, or you can have him after he gets the fake just to settle back and almost behind that play side tackle, plant his feet and throw. It really depends on the kind of quarterback that you have, but it's going to be a pretty quick pass. And we rely on that fullback helping to protect for that pulling guard who's going to pull and protect the outside. So he's going to, do a fake. We don't do a belly fake on this one. We're going to have a fake and then protect. And then that other halfback who's faking the sweep is also going to protect. So you get pretty good play side protection on this pass play. Here's an example where you can see some flow. And I'm actually going to try to turn on my pen here for a second and see if I can draw a little bit. The quarterback is back here. You can see we've got a player protecting backside that looks like it might be our halfback, number 5. Interesting. This is our, this is a play to the left. So this is exactly right. We have that halfback protecting out wide. This is our play side wingback here. And that's almost a perfect route because he's about 2 or 3 yards. He's running flat. We don't want him drifting back because we're trying to get some separation on these 2 routes. And then this is our tight end here. And, that safety may be coming over, but I can tell you this pass was completed and we got a first down on this play because this defender here was in conflict and had to pick either flat or deep. And, he's leaving the deep route apparently to the safety. So we love down pass because we run the belly series a lot. This is our main play action pass, and we'll run this more than we'll run the boot or waggle play. All right, let's get into a little bit of game planning with the belly and kind of how you approach this. The down play is your base play. It's almost always going to be one of the first 3 plays we call in a game. And, this is where you want to get your other coaches involved. You've called the play. Let's say you're the offensive coordinator. You're probably watching the quarterback and the ball carrier. So who out there is watching the defensive end? Who's watching the linebackers? Do you have somebody keeping track of who's making the tackle? And, practice this. Get your coaches used to helping you out on these things because everybody loves to watch the ball carrier, but you need some sense of what the line is doing so that you'll know, do you need to talk to that tight end, sub in, sub out, get another tight end there, talk to him and remind him that he's got to block down or remind him on, what his line call should be. Is the guard getting too deep? Maybe the play's working really well. I'm not exaggerating. We've run this play 7, 8 times in a row. Maybe going right and left, but if we're getting 4, 5, 6 yards on this play, we will keep running it. And I wouldn't even say we're setting up counter, although that's maybe where we're going to go eventually. But we love just when this play is working, it's such a great ball control play. If you've got a rotation of fullbacks you can bring in a new fullback and give them another dose of it. Counter play. Sometimes when things aren't going as well, we jump to counter maybe too quickly. Usually that's when we're just, outmanned. We got a team that's just, frankly is going to be better. Sometimes we jump to counter quickly and we get a little bit of success. But if they're beating you at the line of scrimmage, counter is probably not going to do that well either. And as I've said, down sweep, we like to call that when that defensive end is squeezing to stop the down play. One thing about wing T, just some advice, tendency-wise, you got to pass every once in a while on first and second down. something we like to do, let's say that first series, we've run down a couple times where maybe we're moving the chains. Maybe that first down, that first down we get after that, we might run that down pass and see if we can score and start making sure that safety is honoring our pass game and doesn't start cheating up too much. All right, let's just quickly review because you got to think about what you need to have installed with your line for this sort of series. And I think it's a pretty simple set of blocks you need to have. It's the basic wing tee stuff. It's gap down and reach blocking, and your reach blocking doesn't need to be great for this series because it's usually backside. I'm not saying don't work on it, but gap down has got to be your priority. You need to have an ability to do backer blocks, and that's not just for your linemen, but your running backs better be practicing blocking. And I've talked about this before, but a wing tee running back is going to be faking about 40% of the time. He's going to be blocking about 40% of the time, and he's going to be carrying the ball about 20% of the time. And I strongly advise you to apportion your practice time accordingly. You should be working shoulder skills and blocking technique with your backs, about a third of the time. You should be always working on fakes and evaluating your players on their fakes because those are as good as blocks a lot of the time. Your guards need to be able to pull and kick out. Tight end needs to be able to pull and lead block. And you want to work on that log technique also for the down sweep. But if you don't have that in, or you don't feel like you've got guards that are going to be successful with that, just have them kick out on that down sweep and run inside of it. All right, so as I said, things are they're delayed a little bit. So I'm going to post a poll right now because I like learning more about what problems you guys are facing. I'm going to send you a poll here that I'd like you guys to answer. If you can't do it now, you'll get an email from me, and I'll have you do it in the next the next day or so. It helps me a lot. I appreciate that. And then before we get to some final questions and answers, if you like what you're seeing here, and if you've looked at the Belly Series book, think about picking up my full Wing Tee for Youth Football book. You can get it as a PDF or as an iBook. If you've got an iPad or you've got a Mac, but especially if you've got an iPad, I'll tell you that iBook is pretty sweet. And the reason is unlike the PDF, which is the PDF has links out to video on YouTube, the iBook version has all the video built into the book itself. That's why it's, I think, over 700 meg to download. But you put that on your iPad, you now have a portable set of game film and drills that you can use that you can take with you and be offline. And if you go into the iBook store and look for Wing Tee Youth Football, you'll even find my my Belly Series free book in the iTunes bookstore, so you can kind of get a taste of what that looks like there as well. All right, I promised free giveaway, so you can see the link there, but I'm going to post it now in the chat here. If you're like me, you like to have maybe big play cards that you can kind of print and either laminate or put in a sheet protector. You can take it out on the field and show your players. A little bit easier than showing them out of the book. So that's a PDF that you can download, and you can print just the plays, or maybe in a given week you're going to be looking at a 6-2 or 4-4, and you want to print out the stuff that's that's particular for that defense, then you might find that helpful. All right, and let's at this point, if you've got other questions, go ahead and ask them. And I'm going to scroll up a little bit here. Actually, I've got okay, I already did ask. I answered about when guys are covered. I want to make sure I didn't. Yeah. So we had one coach say, we want to make this look as much like down as possible. So they pull and log with the play side guard, and they keep the backside guard home. I think that's fine. I think you can absolutely have success with that, and it makes it, like you said, look even more like the down play. Coach R said, we've had success with the backside guard and tackle pulling and having the TE tight end shoe shine block and the fullback looking for penetration. As the season progresses, put a line call in for the tackle to stay home if the defense is reading the pulling lineman. So my question is that on counter? I'll ask, maybe Coach R is still on here. So we'll see if maybe he'll chime in on that. You know, some of the polling is going to be dictated on personnel, and you just may find that, you know, pulling a backside guard, you're going to have issues with that with younger kids. You know, clearing through the quarterback and fullback and getting the mesh, and certainly that down sweep might be easier to run with just a play side guard pull. All right. Well, as expected, I didn't have time for the weak side belly stuff. We'll save that for another day. And I encourage you all, use that if you want to kind of drive my next web clinic that I'll do in probably May. You know, put it in the survey and give me some ideas. I'm likely going to start moving towards some preseason kind of installation and practice planning, maybe move into some stuff around scouting and huddle. But I want to pay attention to you guys and ideas that you have. So feel free to speak up and give me ideas when you answer that survey. All right, and with that, I'm going to stay around and chat for a little bit, but we will call it a wrap. And thank you all so much for being here, and great audience. Hope it was useful, and just give me feedback if you got any suggestions or things you think I could have done differently. All right, thanks everyone.